The husky had been howling every time the toddler cried. Everyone assumed it was mimicry. It wasn't mimicry at all. Koda was 2 years old, Siberian husky, grey and white, with pale ice blue eyes that people described as unsettling before they got to know him. He had come into the Okonkwo household as a puppy, and for his entire life had been, in the words of Adaeze Okonkwo, an expressive dog. Huskies communicate. She knew that. She had accepted that when she brought him home. What she had not prepared for was the specific sound he made in the presence of her 15-month-old daughter, Zara, when the child began to cry. It wasn't barking. It was the long, low, resonant howl that huskies are known for, except Koda performed it close, at toddler level, pointed at Zara's face. When Zara cried, Koda arrived and he sang directly at her, and Zara, understandably, cried harder, and the sound in the house became layered and overwhelming and wrong. The first time it happened, Adaeze thought it was a coincidence. The second time, she thought it was a behavioral quirk. The third and fourth times, she called her mother, who said the dog is mimicking the crying. You need to redirect him. Her pediatrician, when she mentioned it at Zara's 15-month checkup, said that canine response to infant vocalization was common, and that separation during episodes of child distress was usually effective. Adaeze began separating them. She put Koda in the laundry room when Zara became fussy. The howling continued from behind the door. She put Koda outside. The howling continued from the yard. She called the husky rescue she had adopted him from. A volunteer named Marcus, who had been placing huskies for 11 years, said it sounded like over-arousal in response to high-pitched sound, and suggested a training consultation. She booked the consultation for 3 weeks out. That same week, Zara got sick. It started slowly. A small fever, 99.8. The kind that Adaeze treated with infant acetaminophen and an extra blanket. Zara was fussy in the way that sick toddlers are fussy. Clingy, tearful, difficult to settle. And every time Zara cried, Koda appeared and howled. Adaeze was increasingly exhausted, increasingly convinced the dog was making an already difficult week worse, increasingly certain that the training consultation could not come soon enough. She was measuring the wrong problem with the wrong instruments. On the third night, Zara's fever dropped. 99.1. Adaeze gave the last dose of acetaminophen and put Zara to bed, and stood in the quiet hallway and felt the particular relief of a sick night that was nearly over. Koda was in the laundry room. The house was still. She went to sleep. At 1:44 in the morning, Koda's howl came through the laundry room door, with a frequency and volume that Adaeze later described as not like his regular sound. Lower. Sustained. Not the response to crying sound, something deliberate in a way she couldn't explain. She went to Zara's room. The child was limp in the crib in a way that was not sleep. Her eyes were half open, her skin was hot. Not 99-degree hot, the kind of heat that registers in the palm of your hand like a warning. Adaeze reached for the thermometer. 103.8. She called her husband. She called the after-hours pediatric line. The nurse on call heard her describe the limpness and the temperature, and told her to go to the ER. If you stay for stories about what animals sense, before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The diagnosis was bacterial meningitis in its very early stage, a rarity in children Zara's age, caught that night at a point when the infection had not yet crossed the threshold that makes it irreversible. Dr. Benson Kwame, pediatric emergency physician, told Adaeze the next morning, "This is very early. You came in at exactly the right window. Bacterial meningitis in a child this age can move from early presentation to critical status within hours. Coming in when you did gave us options." She asked him how she had known to check in the middle of the night when Zara's fever had seemed to be dropping. She said, "The dog." She went back through the previous week in the hospital hallway, the howling every time Zara cried. Not mimicry, not over-arousal. A dog tracking a fever that was building even when the thermometer said otherwise, responding to the chemistry of illness in a body he knew the way he knew the floor plan of the house. Dogs can detect shifts in body temperature through scent. The inflammatory compounds that a fever produces change the chemical signature of a person's skin and breath before a thermometer reflects the change. Koda had been reading those compounds for 3 days. The howling was not a behavioral problem. It was the only alarm in the house that was calibrated for this. Has your dog ever done something you couldn't explain until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Zara was in the hospital for 6 days. She came home with a clean prognosis and a course of treatment that had been possible because the infection had been caught when it was still early. Koda was waiting at the front door. Ade sat on the kitchen floor with the dog for a long time and didn't say much. He leaned against her arm and stayed. She thought about the training consultation that was still sitting in her calendar for next week. She cancelled it the following morning. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never ask for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Zara walked to him when she was settled in the living room. She pressed her forehead to his, and he held absolutely still. His howl had always been expressive. She had always understood that about him. She just hadn't known until now what it was expressing. Tomorrow, a dog who sat in front of a high chair every morning, and what was hidden inside it.